What do float center owners do when they don't have anything to do? Like during the pandemic when we couldn't run our businesses? Well, in this case, two float center owners who are friends got together and started a completely new business, which actually pairs nicely with float centers, Cold Plunge. Check it out. This is actually a really fun episode where Ryan and Michael talk us through their whole process of starting their business here and how it fits into running a float center, and even give us an exclusive update since being on Shark Tank, which was really fun to find out about. So listen in and before we get started, a big shout out to Helmbot. Helmbot is the scheduling software that we use at the float shop. Gosh, I hope every float center is using it. It's designed for float center owners. It just makes so much sense. Everything just fits together perfectly for the business that you're running. And like if you're adding Cold Plunge to it, Helm can accommodate that, whether it's smaller scheduling times, cleaning times, but beyond that, I mean, more complicated things, classes, group classes with teachers, LMTs, all that stuff they can accommodate now, which is absolutely wonderful. They're also doing webhooks, which is something that I need to look into more. I actually want to make a post about it in the Float Collective to learn more about how people are using webhooks so that whenever an action is taken in Helm, you can trigger something like maybe they take a survey or a follow-up email, something like that. And I want to find out more about these webhooks because I think it's a very effective way to potentially increase revenue, right? So you always want to touch base with somebody after their float. Maybe they sneak out. What if after checkout, 2 days later, they're given a follow-up email? That's what I would like to look into more with webhooks, which Helmbot has plenty of. So check them out, helmbot.com. Don't take my word for it. Schedule a free tour, have them walk you through everything about Helmbot, ask all the questions, make sure it can accommodate all of your business's needs and can keep up with your business as it expands, which I believe it will be able to. Also, big shout out to the FTA. The FTA is the Flowtank Association, which is becoming the backbone of the industry, supporting the industry and doing research on water sanitization and also just helping you open your float centers. They're helping talk to your health department. They can actually help you out with that. It's really cool what they're doing, and more is going to be rolling out sooner than later. I'm really excited about where the FTA is going, and they need your support. Go to flotation.org. That's float, F-L-O-A-T, flotation.org, and check out what they're doing, what they can do for you, and how you can sign up to become a member. I feel like every single one of us as float center owners owes it to ourselves and to the industry as a community to help support it. I believe that as a part of this community, all of us owe it to the community to be supporting the FTA, which is just designed to help support us. So let's put in what we get back out and help support this community. Again, go to flotation.org, check them out, and sign up to become a member. All right, let's chat with Michael and Ryan. Let's go. Welcome back to another episode of Art of the Float, where float centers thrive. My name is Dylan. I own the float shop in Portland, Oregon, and I have never done, I've cold plunged as in like a bathtub filled with cold water, and I try to stay in there as long as I can, and then I run into the sauna and heat up until I can't stand it anymore, and then I go into the cold plunge. And I've done that, I don't know, I'd say probably a dozen times.
Hey everybody, it's Kim Hannon. I co-own Sukino Float Center in Sauk Haven, Southern Indiana with my hubby Graham, the other Graham. And I haven't done a true cold plunge. I've, like Dylan, done lots and lots of ice baths and cold bath. I used to do long distance running, and so I don't know how many that was, but pretty much almost every day for a little while. So.
Oh, wow. That sounds brim. This is Drew from New Hampshire Float, and even though I'm in New Hampshire, I pretty much hate the cold, and I'm kind of skinny, definitely lean, and I am more comfortable in the hot temperatures. But this year, I did jump into a river, and it was just after the spring thaw, and my whoop started buzzing because all of my stuff just started going crazy, and I was getting this wong, wong, wong feeling, and I was shaking. I'm like, I hate this. And I jumped out after like 22 seconds. And so I'm trying with the cold plunge because I know it's good for you. I always feel awesome after, but I am such a wimp. So I'll admit it. I think that's what my problem is as far as the cold plunge goes.
Oh, Drew. Okay. This is Gloria Morris. I own Float 60, and my first cold plunge experience was at this place in Kohler, Wisconsin, the Kohler Spa, and I felt freaking amazing. And I think I emailed Michael immediately after that to order my first cold plunge. That was like the catalyst. Since then, I've done it almost 0 times. I think I got in only because I had to fix something but like we dropped something in there, because I'm never at my float centers because that's a whole different story. But yes, I totally love the modality for our customers, but I wish I could do it more often myself. I do take cold showers though.
Exactly the same as what I hear. It's kind of like taking a bath is the same as floating. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, there you go.
You know what? We should just keep handing this off. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself? How many times have you cold plunged?
Yeah, lost count. Michael Garrett. I own Reboot in the Bay Area, and also I'm a co-founder in Plunge. I started cold plunging about 5 years ago. I took a van road trip all the way up the Rockies, like from Utah all the way up to Banff. And Reboot had just like added cryo before then, so I kind of like got the cold therapy thing and started just getting in some like cold rivers. And I like told my wife like, oh, we got to get in. I got to get in every single day. So, like found cold water every day. And then when I got home, I built an ice chest freezer, and so I've been doing it like every day since then, basically.
I'm sorry, you built an ice chest freezer?
That's kind of like the DIY way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, like the thing with the lid. You caulk it and put a thermometer in it and like keep it at your temperature so it doesn't just like create ice. Put a little filter in there. You can kind of create like a DIY chest freezer ice bath.
Okay, got it. Ice bath. Chest. Yeah. Okay, got it.
Yep.
Ryan, please.
I'm Ryan Duey, owner of Capital Floats. We have 2 located: Capital Floats Sacramento, Capital Floats Auburn. I cold plunge every single day. So that's my first thing every single morning. Mike's similar to that too. But I got into it, when was it? I learned of it through Wim. Wim Hof had the Vice documentary. I first heard of it in 2015. Super inspired, but didn't really act on it. And then 2018, I started to get sick a bunch. I got like 6 colds in like 5 months. And it kind of got encouraged to me like, hey, you should start some Wim Hof breath work and get in cold water. So I was hitting the American River comes through us in Sacramento. So I was getting in that, added that in, and just fell in love with it. And then this other, it was like Asha Urban Baths opened in Sacramento. And they had a cold plunge. It was the only place I could find like an actual legitimate like cold plunge tub. And I immediately built a partnership with Capital Floats and them, so like our staff could go there for free, and they could come float for free.
The trade off gets like free
the
massages,
trade. I would trade
free workouts. The trade king.
Yep.
Nice.
So
smart.
Ultimately, it was me. I was the only one of our staff going there, but I was like living at that facility.
All right.
So yeah, that's my. That's how I got into cold therapy.
So the way that you guys talk about it, it's like you're doing like a candlelit yoga every day. That's just like, I just feel so good after this. Like, yeah. But like the way Drew describes it, it's like hell on earth for 22 seconds until he jumps out of the river. So what's different between you and Drew? You know, what is it? Does it happen over time?
Manliness, obviously.
I was going to say, look at that. Look at the
There are
beards
things
on
we
those
can't talk
guys.
about on a podcast that make a big difference.
I've been growing my facial hair for like 3 years. These guys probably shaved yesterday. They're so manly.
Yeah. Beards are a byproduct of cold water.
I'm glad I shaved mine today.
It doesn't get easier. I think that's the thing. I still every morning get up and I'm like, I don't want to do this.
Is that right? Okay. That's really good to know.
I think like the initial learning how to, it's like floating, you know, you get into a float, like a first timer's like, what am I doing in here? How do I settle in? Like, what's the breath process? Like, it's no different than that of like, once you learn how to cold plunge, you kind of can adapt quicker. I know the breath patterns that are going to be effective for me. I know my duration. I know my dose of like when I say that, of like the temperature. So it takes some time to kind of adapt and acclimate, and then it becomes Then you build a practice, and that's very similar to floating.
Okay. So, bear with me here while I try to connect some dots here for myself personally. Like, I used to be into cycling, and the first time I'd go up a hill, it just broke me. It was just hell on earth. But then even if I didn't train for 3 months and then I saw that was back on that hill, just the mental fact that I had been through that before, like I could just kind of access that part of myself. Does the history of having done it before give you the mental fortitude to be like, I know I can do this. I know I can stay in and experience this?
I think for me, it's you feel so good after once you do it for a while that it's like you're like, dude, you gotta do it. Like, just get in. Like, it just becomes like necessary for me. Like, the mental health benefits are phenomenal. Like, I just feel so good. I'm so much more positive. Like, that's a huge thing. It's the energy throughout the day. I'm so much more productive. I feel like more like my true self, who I want to be after I plunge.
How long do you stay in the plunge?
I'm like 2 minutes, like not even. I'm at like 49 degrees, 50 degrees, nothing too crazy. Right. I like to put my head under a lot. That's kind of my thing. I actually have a snorkel now, so I'm fully head under snorkel style. Yeah, it's serious. But I don't like, a lot of people plunge at like 39 and the 30s, and that's really not my thing. But we try to be really inclusive with it. Like, you get benefits all the way up to 60 or even higher. Like, if you're starting out, like, just start at 60 degrees, even 65 if you have to. Do a minute, and then just like work your way down. Like, you get tons of benefits from a 30-second cold plunge.
Ryan, how long do you stay in, and what's your temperature?
I'm about I think it's set to like 45, and I go 3 to 4 minutes. Varies kind of. The other 2 days ago, I did a 5 minutes, kind of just like to do something different. Like, the body can adapt, so I like to switch it up a little. But yeah, normally, 90% of the time, I'm 3-4 minutes, and I know every single time, like we were talking about, it's like I know the benefit I'm going to get. Like, there's very few things that I could. All you have to do is get into the water, and you're gonna get the benefit. Like, it's in 3 to 4 minutes. Like, that's a very manageable piece of time that everyone can utilize. Almost like a cheat code too for timing. Like, it might be an extra thing on the list that you have to do in the morning, but I'm like, it speeds my morning up by, no joke, like I gain an hour just by doing it. Like,
is that just because of your energy level that's accelerated because of it? Why is it? Is it the structure?
Yeah, I think it's the, I think energy and then clarity. It's like, I know I actually go tackle the things I want to go tackle. I liken it again to floating. When I float, yes, it's a place to take kind of your problems or things that you're mulling over or reflective things. It's like, I don't think you solve the problems. I just think the problems kind of dissolve away. Like, you don't really, so it's in its flip term for plunging, I'm just like way more clear in the thing that I want to go tackle. So, and energy wise, I'm just dialed in.
So I'm curious, if a typical plunge is anywhere between 3 and 5 minutes, what is it about going to a facility and taking a plunge there versus hopping in your bathtub in cold water for 3 to 5 minutes? Because for such a short amount of time, that commute and all of that kind of adds up. So when people ask those questions, what do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think our big thing is consistency. Is finding a way to find some level of consistency with it. So if you're going to a commercial center, if you have it at your house, that's the best, but not everyone is going to purchase one and put it right at their house. So you can go to your commercial center, you find some level of consistency with it. And just to be like, filling up your bathtub is a lot of work. Like, you got to go buy ice. It's not, your fridge isn't going to supply that ice. If you actually want to get it down into a 50-degree zone, you're going to be spending $30 on ice. You got to go get that. You got to have that in the house. And that's cool for a one-off. But if you want to be consistent with it, it's really nice to have a facility that you can go to. And some of them have saunas that you can access as well. So it's more of a convenience thing. And just, it can work into your schedule a lot better than putting it in your bathtub.
kind of like having a home gym where you get that cool new machine, you use it once, and then it just sits there collecting dust, and you never really do it again. But having that space where you're traveling to for a specific purpose, I think also gives a good separation and gets you out of the house and gives you something to do, and you can actually, use other services that might be at a place that has that. But I imagine I could see people saying, "Oh, I'll just do it in my bathtub," and they do it once. It's a pain in the ass, and they never do it again.
We're all very familiar with that statement of floating.
Right.
And do it at my house.
Yeah.
So I have a question so who actually founded the company, came up with the idea? Was it a joint process? I'm curious about the transition that you took between being a float center owner of multiple locations. I think you both have 2 locations, or maybe even more than that. What kind of switched that over to a manufacturing position? I'm very curious about that.
Let you take that, Mike.
Yeah. So obviously COVID shut down Reboot. We're in the Bay Area, so it was very strict. Probably less than 2 months in, I was like, I need a project. I got to do something. And it was top of mind because I had built that ice chest freezer and had researched like what's out there. And there wasn't much. Like the options out there were like $10,000 for a cold plunge. So yeah, I hit up my dad. I said, hey, I actually went and visited one of the manufacturers, Morosco, met up with those guys. They were super cool and inviting. And so yeah, went out to Arizona with them and started building prototypes with my dad. And then came home and actually found the tubs that we use at Plunge and built a plunge that I put into Reboot. I actually sold a float pod, put in a sauna, put in the plunge, and then put out an Instagram video and an email and just said, hey, if you guys are interested, I'll build you one. I had 2 customers hit me up. They were stoked. Built 2 prototypes, delivered those. It was really cool. They were so excited about it. One guy had the champagne for me. And it felt like I was kind of onto something because they were so excited about the product I had created. And at that point, I invited Ryan into the garage where I was building the prototypes. And I think I showed him one time and he was kind of like, huh. I thought he was going to be super into it. And he was kind of like, huh, this looks interesting. And then I was like, well, what's going on?
Had he been cold plunging at that point? Was it just the design where he was
Ryan was into cold plunging. It was the design.
Okay.
It was I could tell it was still a little raw, And then I invited him back a week later, and I had tweaked everything and cleaned it up. And he was like, "Oh, damn! This is legit." I was like, for me, it was
I mean, to be frank, Mike's an incredible engineer, and that's not my skill set.
Sure.
And so when I saw the plunge, Mike, I think was just laying out this is prototype 1. This is going to get 1,000 times better. And I just didn't have that vision.
Sure.
And so I saw him work so quickly and improve. I mean, to be frank, Mike 3D designed that. This was nothing to within 3 months. Our unit's different than what it is then, but it's not that different. Mm-hmm. And he had built this and designed this in 3 months, and I had seen some iterations take place, and that was the moment where I was like, because he was kind of asking, hey, do you want to do this as a company together? And I just wasn't there. Obviously, I was going through Capital Floats had been shut down. A lot of things in my life were kind of in transition. So to go and commit to starting another company. But anyways, I saw his ability to really improve and engineer this product. That's when I was like, okay, I believe all in this modality. Now I think we actually have a product that can become world class and a guy behind it that is world class in design and products. So
I love hearing that affection for each other. That's really refreshing to hear because you've been in business a couple of years together. I guess I lost track of the timeline because I thought that I went to this Kohler spa in 2019. Maybe it was 2020. I don't know. Where was Float 60 on the customer list?
You guys were early.
Early, yeah. We launched September of 2020, so it's been just over 2 years.
Okay, yeah, because I know we had it prior to us shutting down, so I think I'm in a time warp. But okay, so you...
Oh, funny. Wait,
you
Gloria,
decide, yeah.
Let me ask you a question, and then I'll let these guys, peel it back a little bit. So, just from the customer perspective, when you get one of these things, what are you buying, and what do your customers experience?
Yeah, so we went with the whole sauna and ice or cold plunge combo in one room. I had 5 float tanks, and I knew that I wanted to have multiple modalities, so I went from all floats to adding this. And it was really because of Michael's video, because I saw that Instagram video, and I had literally just experienced that at the Kohler Spa. So it wasn't something that I was actively researching. I just knew that I had an amazing experience over that December, whatever that year was. And I thought this is a really interesting combination for my float center. So I ripped out a float tank, and then I think I had already had the sauna, and then added the cold plunge. So the experience, is an optional, fire and ice, which I totally got from Michael, and now everybody's adopted that, right? I hope he trademarked that at some point, because it seems like everybody in the industry.
Open source.
Yeah,
I got that
open
from
source.
Ryan.
I like that.
Call it fire and ice. Yeah,
I like that. So that's what the experience is, and it's been. There's some challenges to it because you can't isolate one service from the other because they're in the same room. So there's some nuances there. But for the most part, we find that people are, happy to do the combination. And
Cool.
it's worked out quite well.
I mean,
so that we've added it in other locations as well.
And do they have the sauna and the plunge in the same room with the other locations? Like it works together that well?
Yes.
Got it.
I'll be doing my
that's
third
what I would
one.
Want. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we can post pictures of it by all means, but can you describe what it looks like? I'll hand this off to Gloria first, and then I want you guys to talk about what's going on inside there that makes it special.
The cold plunge itself is a beautiful, very simplistic design. I don't want to minimize your engineering, but it's a beautiful piece.
The iPhone is a simple design.
Yes, it's the Apple of cold plunges. But
nice.
Yeah, I think it's, the room itself, actually, to be honest, it's very cramped because the room wasn't designed to have the shower and the cold plunge and the sauna. We kind of rigged that all together, and it works. It's not ideal. I'm sure other people have much better setups. But from a customer experience perspective, I think having it all in one is really key. And then also we've considered a communal type of approach where it's more open. I know Jeremy Jacob in San Antonio, he doesn't use your product. I gave him a hard time about that. Let me tell you. No, he's got more of an open layout where the cold plunges are out in the open. That's my setup, but I don't know how everybody else is.
There's an infinite number of ways of doing it. We were just talking with Othership earlier. They have the class based, actually. They have a big 50-person sauna, and they take you through breath work and sauna, and then people get in and they guide you through the cold plunge. And that's
cool.
That's a really interesting model. And then some gyms have these, and you can just kind of do a cold plunge one-off. I think this is more like what we have is the fire and ice model. And then, I think the, what's the float place in Austin, Ryan? Float.
Eric over at Ocean Lab.
Oh, Ocean Lab, yeah.
They have 2 on the patio that people, it's more
outside.
you kind of access whenever outside. So there's an infinite number of ways of doing it. But we get a lot of compliments on the tub. We have an XL now, which is a bigger model. It's a sleek, kind of white, those white freestanding tubs that are kind of trendy. So that's kind of the look and feel of it.
Claw feet at the bottom. Nice.
Well, sorry, let me just ask one more question. I'm still curious about the transition. What does your day look like? Do you spend most of your time on cold plunge and dealing with manufacturing issues? Do you even have manufacturing issues? Or are you running your float spa? I'm fascinated by this because I think you and I are similar in that we don't always, we're not in our float center as much as far as I know. So I'm just curious about that transition you had, and do you regret it? I can't imagine dealing with a bunch of float center owners or, these external customers with this big piece of equipment. It's a whole different dynamic, right, than a direct to consumer model. So
I love it.
Tell us about that.
I love running Plunge, and I love building stuff. I love how we can scale it and like build this brand. With Reboot, we have 3 locations. Like those 2 other build out, they're just excruciating. And then I have incredible managers. So they basically run everything. I'm not spending a lot of time a week on Reboot anymore. So Ryan's the same way. He's got amazing managers that he's, figured out how they can run it for him. And we spend most of our time on Plunge and growing this business.
Yeah, it was a unique transition with, we were in Mike's garage to start. That was our first office, and we were just kind of delivering from there. And we leveraged the float centers actually as our first customers. It was like we emailed them. I emailed Capital Floats, he emailed Reboot, and we sold 15 or so, and we hand delivered all the first units. Like him and I was more or less his assistant, and we were in his garage, and then we'd go show up and hand deliver to these people in either the Bay Area or Sacramento. And so we got to meet all of our first customers. Cool. We got to really understand where maybe some pain points with the product was and learn with it, and built some really good relationships, and running customer service and all the stuff from the side. And then from the float center perspective, we were same with Mike. Like I have great managers. I've probably even stepped back more than Mike has. Like Haley, who is my partner in Capital Floats Auburn, she went off and started Cap Floats Auburn, which opened right when COVID. That opened like 2 to 3 months before we launched Plunge. So that took a while for that to get off the ground. That was, June of 2020 that opened. And so that was a really tough first year. Well, she's really gotten her, done really well at getting that at a really good operating place. So then she's taken over as like CEO of Cap Floats now. So I've stepped back from I'm not even really involved in day-to-day stuff at all. So I'm fully in on Plunge, and
nice.
Yeah, it's a full-time gig and a half.
Well, sorry, I'm monopolizing the questions, Dylan.
Go
Do you want to step in? I haven't recorded any pod in the last couple of weeks, so I'm like a pent up.
She's getting it all out.
Like person. I'm getting it all out because I've taken a little leave of absence. I don't know if you guys can talk about this, but I was so excited to see you got a deal on Shark Tank. Mm-hmm. And I know I mentioned it at the Float conference, but is there anything you can talk about related to that and kind of what that experience was like? I think you just did the industry so proud. I shared that with so many people, and I was just so proud to see how you represented the industry. So yeah, I'll stop talking and curious to know what you can speak to on that.
Thanks for that.
Is it all roses?
Yeah, thank you.
It
was fun. It was a blast.
It was blast. You go for it, Mike. Make sure you tell them about your dancing though.
It was nerve-wracking. Like we were prepared. We got an Airbnb one day, and we practiced our lines together, and we had a great time where we were like in the afternoons. We didn't have to like wake up and do it. We're on our trailer. We're practicing more. They get you ready. You go out there and you hit your mark. And it's like, okay, guys, like when these doors open, we're live to walk out and hit your mark. And you're just like, okay, wow, we're about to do Shark Tank, and there's no cuts. Like it's real. Right. Like, so the sharks don't know anything about anything. They're sitting there. You walk out and it's just like live recording, and they obviously edit it down to like whatever, but it's real. And
how much is it edited down? I'm curious about that because I like watch Shark Tank like a psycho.
We talked to them for like 35 minutes, Ryan.
Yeah, 35, 40, and it was a 5-minute show. Our segment.
Yeah, hardcore editing. But you're standing there, and like the doors are closed, and it's like quiet on the set, and you're just like, oh man, okay, what's my line? And I'm like, and my mind's like blank because my like heart is just like pounding, and the adrenaline is just pumping, right? And I'm like, I'm about to fall on my face on national TV. I'm a failure. Like it's also spiraling downwards, and I just something popped into my head of like, me and Ryan always agree that we're going to have fun. No matter what happens, we're going to have fun. I go, bro, let's just have fun. We give a hug, and I just start like dancing. I'm just like, we're gonna have fun. This is gonna be a blast, and like everything turned positive, and the doors opened. We walked out, and we did pretty well. We nailed it. Robert got in the plunge. He did awesome. He was like panicking at first, but we like calmed him down through his breath.
It was so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Yeah, it was
well done. I think you need a golf clap for that. Yes, I mean it was like I said, I've watched it so many times, and I just like my heart breaks for the people who just choke, and then I always wonder like, did they really choke that bad, or did they just zone in on that one choke, right? I'm always curious about the editing process for entertainment. They have to have people who choke. But
I was really impressed with the show. They like really have the entrepreneur's best interest. Like they really did want to elevate entrepreneurs. There is like basically a shrink that's on site that's like meeting with everyone pre and post. Wow. So like that would visit our trailers. And so, and he was like, I basically have two pitches. I have one that's like the bomb and one that's like, you did the good job. And so it was, but I think they're pretty honest and not trying to like make people, my feeling is over the years, they've gotten less and less harsh with people, and it's a little more uplifting. But I do remember signing the contract. It was like the most paperwork I'd ever signed to do this. Like it was insane. And I remember, it was a 100-page doc or whatever, and I'm just scrolling, and it's like, I'm not reading this. But I stopped at one spot when I'm scrolling through, and it was like, I agree that I might become a major embarrassment. It was like something worded so like straightforward of like
humiliation.
Yeah, humiliation is a possibility. Like, and I was just like, okay, I'm not reading any more of this. Just get to the bottom and just sign this thing. Like, I'm out.
Wow.
So they are front and center on it.
Can we talk about the after? Because I think most people probably know that just because you sign a deal or, make a deal doesn't mean that you actually make a deal in real life. Is that still ongoing, or can you talk about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. We we did, got a deal, and it enters into like a diligence period. And I mean, there's no better place here than it hasn't gone through. It didn't go through. And so, which at the end of the day, we were okay with. And so amicable, really cool, had some good back and forth with Robert. I think for us, ultimately for the company, it was the best decision for us. But all good situations. So this is breaking news. We here on Art of the Float.
Thank you for sharing. I genuinely appreciate it.
Well, I see it as a success story because, you didn't give your company away, right?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
there's a big bite that comes out with that. But obviously, you guys have been getting tons of orders. I could just, maybe I'm wrong, but I just feel the success. I feel, and this goes back to the question about the trends, right? There are so much focus and upside with wellness modalities, including floating, but the mental health aspect, and Michael, you mentioned this, I think that this is such a powerful time to have those modalities. So of course, like Float 60, we're focused on kind of pivoting in that direction. And I'm just curious to see, like, did you yield amazing sales? Like, what kind of impact did it have on your business? Did it change your infrastructure to a degree?
You're talking about the show?
Yeah, the impact of the show, or aside from the impact from the show, is just the trend of wellness. Like, how tell us what you see in the trends.
It's so hard to know what was the show and what wasn't, because you listen to like the biggest podcasts in the world, and they're all mentioning cold plunge all of a sudden, right? We have a huge influencer network. They're all posting like it in the summer. We always do our best, and it aired right before summer. So there was like all these like trends like climbing at the same time. So it's really hard to tell how much impact the show had, but we've definitely grown a bunch since the show aired.
Mm-hmm. It crushed the biggest thing is our web traffic. I mean, by far it's aired twice on ABC. The web traffic is insane over those. You get the East Coast hours and then the West Coast hours, and it spikes. And we had great weeks coming out of it, Yeah, but it was tough to tell. I think it was actually just really helpful for us to shoot for it. So we were like, we always knew this was coming. And it was like, how do we get we kind of built in our heads, like, even if it's not that, like, doesn't change our company, like, we need to be ready for this. We need to be able to produce units that are the highest of quality, no issues, and we can meet, let's say if, let's just say 1,000 orders came in a day, which they didn't. Could we even try? Is that going to sink us, or could we even potentially keep up with that? So that was what we were shooting for. So I think we just kind of had something for us to like really work towards, collectively for the team. It wasn't like because we've been hiring service, so much,
answering all the questions that come in. Like we geared up for sure.
Oh, got it.
That's great. It's like hyperscaling, right? It pushed you to get to that level quicker than you would in an organic way. So that's a fantastic benefit that you could take away from it. But I'd like to believe it was all of your influencers and your hard work that drove this trend versus just Shark Tank. But anyway, we love our services. Like I said, I'm about to purchase another one for our Crown Point location, which is a baseball facility, not a float center. And I love the product. It's been very reliable. So well done on that.
How do people? So we just talked about like the kind of the behind the scenes, how their business is doing. But I'm curious how the cold plunge works in your business and in your guys' business. Like even when you first started, like you said, you just put it out there to your customers, and maybe that was to sell the product, like the actual tubs to people. But like, how does it work in the float center for people to come in? How often are they coming in? What are you charging? If you care to talk about that, I'm just curious about the inner workings. If I added this to the float shop, like what would be enticing to me? Like what financials might be enticing, and is it easy to use? Is it like a float room where you have to spend a bunch of time cleaning the room?
So I think that's the number one thing, right? It's not driving our revenue to a new scale because we don't market it that way. Okay, so the way we go about it is our core services are floating, and then we have these ancillary services. So I don't focus on it as much as I probably could, and that may change. By the way, like I'm working to like possibly re-engineer our whole strategy because I do believe that this has equal footing, and it's just the way that we've positioned it in the market. But we position it as an ancillary service to your core membership. And so you can do it as an add-on or, do it in conjunction with the sauna. And so because it's like one room out of our inventory of 5 rooms, it's of course not going to be the same impact, right? The other factors are the timing. Like I don't think I can give it a fair shake and say it's accurately doing this now because we've had COVID. I just added it to another location a year ago that was just starting out, that's never even heard of floating. And, there's a lot of barriers to kind of get to the state of steady, and we're not there yet.
Let me ask these guys, let me ask them for their experience in their float centers.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. We're actually changing our pricing. I think we underprice it at first because we have, one of the locations is 5 float pods, the other one's 3, and then there's 1 fire and ice. Then there's a sauna, and another location also has cryo. It's a lot of services, but we price the fire and ice as the same price as a cryo, but it's taking like an hour time block, and it actually does take a decent amount of flip like effort. People getting out, they're leaving a lot of water. So we're pricing it up to a float actually. And then you also have to consider like you can get multiple people to book it. We also underpriced that. So you need to charge people the add-on for other people to come in because it does end up being a decent amount of laundry. That's one thing people can learn from. So we're upping our float prices, and then we're putting the fire and ice the same prices at float going forward.
All right. Can I ask a real basic question I probably should have asked more towards the top of the show, which is like, what is this tub doing? It sounds like you can set the temperature. I think Ryan said 45 degrees. And then is it doing filtration as well, or is it just temperature management? What is this tub doing?
Yeah, it's like constant filtration. So the pump is always running. And then you change filters once or twice a week. And then what's nice, since there's no salt, you can just drain it every week. And then we have a non-chlorine protocol with hydrogen peroxide. We're actually launching our commercial hydrogen peroxide solutions. We'll ship you everything you need for hydrogen peroxide. We also have a chlorine solution if people want to go that route. So yeah, kind of similar to a float pod with the water maintenance, but you can drain it once a week and just start from scratch.
Can I jump in with
That's
a question?
just water.
Just water is good, but you have a constant pump running or chiller. Which one? The pump is running, and
Yeah, it's yeah.
so you have something making noise. So for people who have float tanks, you have something that's constantly going.
The pump's like whisper quiet.
Okay,
Yeah,
The
very quiet.
The chiller does. It's like the fan you do hear. So it depends on obviously like your soundproofing. Like we have had a few people complain about it, but I think in general, I don't know how it's been for you, Gloria, but it's not like a float room pump to me. It's
Okay.
There's
Yeah,
no
that's a
vibration
non-issue.
or
Okay.
anything.
That's
Yeah,
that's
it's a
what I was curious
non-issue.
about.
the pump is
Yeah.
like pretty small.
Okay,
This might be a dumb question, but if I got into, maybe I would try to like, sorry for the lame, outdated expression, but man up and not squeal when I got in one of these in a public environment. But are there people who are like yelping when they get into this? And is that also when you consider soundproofing of like, if you have a float room right next door, do you need to consider that?
That's what you'd have to consider. Absolutely.
Okay.
And
It's
hard to
mostly the-
control. Right. Yep. It's the yelping.
Yeah, I mean, we've
for sure.
seen there's like an education, of prepping. It's like a float. You want to like educate someone before they go in, like how they want to prep for it and, breathe through it and have that experience. So it's kind of like a culture setting from the beginning.
All right.
But yeah, it definitely can invoke a lot of like people laughing and
Sure.
yelling. But I think it's more of an education kind of facilitation from the first time someone getting in.
And that's same with cryo too. I mean, we have, I could never put our cryotherapy sauna in our location, our newest location, because people are just so obnoxious when they go in it, right? And the nitrogen actually makes noise too. So, and I think you were going to ask another question, Dylan, so I'll let you go, but I have another one related to cryo.
Okay, well, I just wanted to ask if it's okay, just about the physiology, like, or any research that's going on. Like, is there research backing this up, or do you know what's actually happening besides, is it just pure adrenaline that's flooding your system that's waking you up so you don't need coffee? I mean, what is it that's changing in your body so that you guys seem to just be completely sold on this, selling a product or not? It seems like you guys, this has a powerful meaning to you guys in your lives. What's happening in your body?
Yeah, I mean, I first learned like from Rhonda Patrick. She's got a whole kind of study that really talks about norepinephrine, like a 5x in norepinephrine. There's huge, like Huberman always talks about dopamine, and not like you're getting the spike like dopamine for a second, like a hit of a cigarette. It's like you get dopamine for hours, which kind of changes the game. Endorphins, like, so many different things are happening. It's
From the dopamine front, like that's like your baseline. It actually increases your baseline reservoir of dopamine in the body, or like your receptors grow over time. So you actually get more access to that focus and that motivation. When people say like, I feel more capable after a plunge, like it's something we commonly hear. It's like, you do it over time, that starts to become, it's much more a common chemical that's running through the body. Cool study I just saw the other day was, forget where it was, it was out of Asia, forget exactly where the lab was, but they did it as a treatment for cancer patients, and it showed significant, to the point that it said more research is needed, but at this point, like, this would be a recommended treatment for cancer suppression. It had impact on actual tumors of people. So as people doing like a low sugar diet and incorporating cold plunging consistently into that, and it was actually
inflammation is huge.
Yep. So that was like, it's cool to see those type of things. Like, I believe it. Like, I feel it more from like the energy and the mood and those type of things. But to see it having this impact in these other ways that we haven't seen. I mean, we had an employee that joined here with us. He has MS. He had MS, had no real outlet for doctors, no real option for what he was dealing with, autoimmune disorder. Mm-hmm. He started getting in cold water, radical, like healed himself, found out we were a local company. It's like his mission now. We've been working like autoimmune disorders have been like something people with that type of, with that disease, like we're seeing them like quickly within like very short windows of times, like getting their symptoms under control, where it's becoming like a dosed medicine for them, where it's like, 1 to 2 plunges a day. I do this for 3 minutes and like I can actually get off medications. We just did another piece recently.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. It's wild. Like the actual, like you talked about research, there's stuff out there. I mean, Wim Hof's website's awesome for that. Andrew Huberman's done some deep dives into cold plunges. It's more just the testimonies we're hearing. It's just, it's mind blowing. Like I got into it. Mike and I got into it. We're healthy guys. Like we did it more for like I said, like we felt great from it. But what we've realized is like, oh my God, this is actually a treatment for a lot of people for a lot of different things they're dealing with. And it's humbling. It's super humbling to witness and kind of hear daily of what stories coming in. I could talk all day on what we're hearing, but it's... Sure.
So, Michael, I'd love to get your perspective and your positioning on the actual cryotherapy with the actual liquid nitrogen versus the cold plunge. I've seen a couple of people out there who, say one is better than the other. But at the end of the day, it's my understanding based on the research that I've done, which hasn't been recent. It was just, a couple of years ago, that you're still dilating the blood vessels, right? And then fresh blood, oxygenated blood is going through when they dilate again. Is that the phenomenon that's going on with both? Why is one better than the other? And I'm curious, at Reboot, since you have both, how do you distinguish between the two?
Yeah, it's the same effect, right? That you're triggering that effect on the body, that cold shock response. I'd say the dose is going to be higher with a cold plunge, but for a lot of people, the 3 minutes in and out, dry. I don't have to get wet. I don't have to. The cold is just, it's going to be more intense, more uncomfortable. So it depends on the person, kind of what they want, right? They kind of like, people find their own way. Like some people, they hear the cold water, it's like no way, but they're willing to do cryo. And other people, they're more hardcore. They want to be Joe Rogan, Andrew Huberman, and they're like, yeah, I want to do cold plunge. Like everyone's finding this information from different places, and they maybe try both. So we kind of just let people find whatever speaks to them,
So if you call it cold therapy, because we literally just re-engineered our brochures because some locations have real cryo, some have the cold plunge. And so, I wanted to just call it cold therapy. At the end of the day, that's what it is. And your physical body response is the same as far as I knew. So you validated
totally.
That.
Cryo is incredible. Like what Ryan was saying about autoimmune disorders. We've seen so many incredible benefits. Like I got into it because it feels great. Same with floating. It's like, oh, I love this. And then you get into it and you're like, wow, the number of benefits is mind blowing. And we saw that with cryo as well. And so it works. I'll say that.
Anything? Well, first of all, can we get your website if somebody is interested in? How do they get in contact with you if they want to find out more about adding it into their float center or just more about it?
Yeah, they could reach out to, the website's thecoldplunge.com. We have different, if they're a commercial facility, inquiries there, and our team will reach out to them and go over any and all of their questions.
Be careful. I think you're going to see a massive spike on your website.
I'll get the team prepped and ready.
Compared
we
to
might beat out Shark Tank. Yeah. If you want to talk about humbling, Shark Tank's about to be humbled. We kind of have a big reach here.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for joining us. Actually, before we go, is there any last bit you'd like to leave with our audience about the cold plunge?
Last bit. Get in with cold water. It's incredible.
Boom.
Anywhere.
Appreciate you guys bringing us on.
Thank you guys very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really, truly appreciate it. Thank you. And as always, thanks to my co-host for being here. Absolutely a damn pleasure having you guys. Thanks for our listeners for joining us each and every week. Truly appreciate it. Thanks to those of you who are supporting us on Patreon as well. Thanks for supporting us on shop.artofthefloat.com. Thanks so much. And thanks to our sponsors, the FTA and Helmbot. Thank you. And my goodness, I think, I couldn't have said it better. Until next week, getting some cold water. We'll see you next week.